Welcome to today's Life Coach Pod. I am so glad you're here for the show. What we have in store today is a good day. We have somebody super positive, super interesting, and we're going to dive in with Charlotte in just a moment. You can see her there. She has to wait and put up with me reading and reminding everybody what day it is. Today is a Thursday. That one's a hard one for me. Something about Thursdays always get lost for a bit. It's April 2nd, or if you're keeping time on the new calendar, it's March 33rd. So for those of you stuck at stay at home, it's going to feel like March is going to last a long time. So I thought I'd start keeping track of that for you. I have a few time capsule moments of current events and things that are in the news. And then I wanted to bring your attention to tomorrow's guest, Stacy Scott, who is a paranormal investigator. That's right. You heard me right. She solves crimes using the sixth dimension. I forget what dimension that is, but anyway, she's going to tell us how she does it. I'm very interested to talk with her. And then I'm working up a show for Monday. Mondays tend to be motivational Mondays. I take the show by myself and try to come up with a topic that will help you make your life better. So that's what's on the short list. I'm still working on guests for the rest of next week. So let's start with some news, breaking news today that is or isn't interesting depending on who you are. The first thing has to do with healthcare. For those of you who have lost jobs where you had healthcare benefits, you have two choices right now with the infinite amount of money you have left from your severance, because I'm just sure everybody's getting huge severance packages. I'm being sarcastic right now. I'm sure you're not. But it is important for you to know that you can then, once you are let go, if you had health insurance with your employer and you're let go, you can sign up for affordable care insurance. I'm not telling you it's affordable. I am not telling you it's the best insurance. I'm telling you, you can at least get it. And it is going to, in most cases, be less expensive than COBRA, which is what you might be inclined to do. But I'm going to encourage you to go look at the plans on the ACA because they are very likely to be more affordable. That said, watch your deductibles. If there's a chance you could get this virus, it's still unclear how we're all going to be charged for that if we end up in the hospital. I don't think it's going to break our way, but that's to be determined. Right now, they're discussing that in Congress. So I have my political bias there. I believe there's one party that's really looking out for us, but you need to do your own research. So I just want you to know to look at the ACA and go check on that. It may be that you end up on Medicare or whatever, or Medicaid. There are different programs too. In some states, not all, like in California, those are integrated into the plans. In some states, they didn't. Those states that tend to be more red, they didn't necessarily put in the public care plans in place in their ACA coverage. Probably one of the downsides of us being so distributed in each state fending for itself, because you really are at the, I forget what the saying is, but it's up to your governor on what kind of services you have. So this is a good time to get educated about how civic-minded and people-minded your leaders are. All right, there's my political discussion. The next thing you need to know about is small business loans. The Small Business Administration, SBA, has an amazing loan for anybody who even is a sole proprietor. And I'm talking to a lot of my podcasters out there right now who might be unemployed. If that podcast is helping you run your business, there you go. You can qualify as an SBA from my initial reading of the loan. I want you to go take a look at what's on the SBA. Does that COVID-19 plan, these loans, they're for payroll, and you need to figure out if you can pay yourself for the next 2.5 months. From what I understand in the preliminary research I've done, they're looking to extend this plan if we end up being quarantined longer. And if you're reading ahead, and I hate to tell you the rest of the story, but it looks like this thing's going to come back with a vengeance in the fall. So there's a very good chance, unless we come up with some way to really mass produce a vaccine, we could all end up being quarantined again as we move into the fall. So look now at these loans and consider this as a very, very good way to supplement your income, or to at least keep your home and the things that are important to you in the near term. SBA COVID-19 loans. And I'll try to get more information on that. I might end up talking about that on Monday because I think it's so important. There's so many of us that are gig workers like me who need ways to get money, and we often fall through the cracks. So I might end up talking about that more in depth on Monday. And then the last thing, which is just, classic, because what is it? We make plans and God laughs. It just out today are the predictions for the hurricane season that begins shortly. They've already named hurricanes. So, and ironically, one of the names is Marco, and I can't help thinking of Marco Rubio in Florida. So if that happens, that's just going to be an unfortunate coincidence. But what they're expecting, and the reason I'm bringing this up, is they're expecting a few of these to be massive, which of course makes my cynical mind say, just move now, sell that property right now, just get out of there, move to the Midwest. What do you need to be on the coast for anyway? You can't even go out there right now. So I think they were talking about as many as 3 to 5, they're expecting 3 to 5 storms at category 3 to 5. So I don't know how we're going to do this. This runs from June to November. I don't know how to do this when we already have medical workers that we're wearing out, and we have first responders that we're wearing out, and we have a FEMA office that clearly has exceeded its grasp. So I'm telling you now, start thinking about that. The way we plan for these things is going to be different than any way we've ever planned before, because we just don't have access to the same resources, because things are temporarily closed and production lines are shifting priorities. So you need to think this through as hurricane season comes. And on that happy note, I am going to, I don't even have, I didn't change my guest up here. This guest should say Charlotte. I'm going to bring up Charlotte. Charlotte I talk about this, Charlotte, when I was teasing your appearance today. You were a lawyer, and then your parents wept because you left the law. But I've promised people that you didn't pay for law school like we do in the United States. So you'll have to tell us about that. But you're now doing coaching, and specifically you're looking at, you work with lawyers, and specifically as being raised by a lawyer. That's an audience I understand who really does need a coach. So why don't you tell us about yourself and how you made this pivot?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really loved that whole recap, by the way. That was really useful information for everyone in terms of what's going on in the world.
Yes.
That's good. So yeah, me, I started my career as a lawyer. We don't actually have JD. I'm a solicitor in England, but that has a very different connotation over here.
Solicitor. So you don't become a JD over here. You're just solicitor. Sounds so dirty.
Well, I know. That's why I have to use the word lawyer. I'm a former lawyer.
Okay.
So I'm a solicitor for the courts of England and Wales, and obviously non-practicing now. And I practiced for 7 years in the UK. I was an employment lawyer. Quickly moved up the ranks in my organisation, and everything was going really well for me. However, I was really burning the candle at both ends, and I was often, in the office late at night, sometimes until 3 o'clock in the morning. And, there was just aspects of life as a lawyer that I could kind of project and see into the future that it wouldn't necessarily serve me well. When I had a family, when I really wanted to kind of cultivate my future, this lawyer life wouldn't serve me. And I also had a lot of creative energy in there. I went into the law because I wanted to help people. And so at times, some of the work that I did as an employment lawyer for corporations didn't always serve in line with the values that I held dear. And so
you mean actually helping the little guy versus the big corporation?
Well, I think, there were examples of companies having to make really difficult decisions, layoffs now. And actually that's no fun for anyone. It's not fun for the big companies just as much as it is for the little guy. But there was often, situations where you might be managing someone out of the business. And, it's just not that whole feel good experience that you get, in the coaching space. You get to help people, and you get to help them step into their best selves. You help them to make transformations. And so, there was aspects of my legal career that didn't really make you feel good in that way.
I love that you use the same language that we used in executive staff meetings, which is managing someone out of the business. It's very different than what's happening right now with mass layoffs. This is absolutely an exceptional time, but I do remember it's like, would you like to pursue your career elsewhere? These very nice ways we have of saying it in civilized language when it's like, sorry, buddy, you got to go. And it used to make me sick as a manager. So I get it. I can't imagine, you're there facilitating this because we got it. We always had to have lawyers involved.
Yeah. Yeah. And on the flip side of that coin as well, you do, you get sometimes some very bizarre situations where employees might be doing some slightly unusual things and taking advantage. So, it's a two-way street. It really is. And, I have lots of different tales that I could share with you regarding those days. But yeah, so around 6 years ago, I moved to California, and that is where I met you.
That's right.
And for a while, I was doing business consulting and marketing strategy. And again, there was something that just did not feel right to me about the work that I was doing. And so I kind of dug a bit deeper, and that is when I found coaching. And I had a coach myself, and I just found going through the coaching process, it was so transformational for me. And I started to kind of dig deep into where my talents and passions kind of align. And for me, the answer was coaching. And I really want to help people, step into lives that they absolutely love. And I truly believe that we can all live our own version of success on our own terms. And so that is what I now do. And I help predominantly lawyers, but I work with other individuals as well, business owners, entrepreneurs. But the fact that I have walked in the lawyer's shoes and I understand some of the kind of personality traits that are drawn to the law, such as perfectionistic tendencies, for example, it helps, I think. So that's me.
That's great. And it's funny, there's two things I wanted to talk about. One is that, first of all, my mom would agree that when you become a lawyer, people change, because she often would tell us the stories of how my dad changed. Once he hit law school and started practicing, he wasn't the same rabble-rouser. Well, he still was a rabble-rouser, but he just became more serious about certain things. I think the law kind of takes away your sense of humor because there's always a consequence, right? When you start to think like a lawyer, that's the shift that happens. The other thing is, I think it's interesting in listening to you talk about coaching, because I get excited about it too, but I realize what people don't understand, what happens when you learn about coaching, when you go to school for it. And believe me, we both picked the same program where they put us through our paces. There's a lot of technique and real training that goes into this so that we have these tools to use to help people move forward. And I think that's what I think they think maybe coaches just think they're smarty pantses or can help people because they've been there, but it's not that at all. That's just extra. That's, if somebody's got a life experience like you have with being a lawyer, that's just extra juice. But the technique itself, we really train for it. It's a lot around communication and listening and really knowing how to ask the right questions. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important, because I just want to make that distinction, because I really want to hear about how you're approaching this idea of life design now, because that's what I know I watch you do a lot on social media. You do videos and things that help with life design. So tell us about your approach. How have you put this together for your approach?
Yeah. So, my philosophy is, and this applies to all of us, this does not just apply to lawyers, that in order to perform at our best and show up as our best, from the context of our career, yes, but also in the context of being a happy human being, being, a great parent, being able to look after your health and wellness, it all really needs to be considered when pulling together and designing your life. And what happens with a lot of individuals is they start their careers being really hungry and being ready to work incredibly hard and work those long hours, and that is their goal, that is their destination, to, you know, reach a senior position within said organization. This is often what happens. And however, you know, 10, 15 years in, people have started to, you know, get married, have a family, their priorities change, their core values change. And so what happens is they become incredibly out of alignment, because it's all been work, work, work. And then they get to a point where they're like, hey, where's the time for me? You know, my health is suffering because all I do is work. I have difficult relationships in my family because I'm never there to show up for them. And so these issues arise. And life design is all about looking at your life right now, and taking stock of where you're at. And then it is thinking about where you want it to be in the future, and then creating what the roadmap is from getting from A to B.
So if I hear you correctly, because it's a little bit nuanced from the everybody needs a 5-year plan, what you're really talking about is this is a 360-degree look at where you are now. It's really looking at the whole thing, the things that you may have actually shut out because you just haven't had time for it, and looking at how to shift all of those things as you move ahead and take a 360-degree look at that as well. So that's relationships, knowing your parents are aging, seeing that you might have a special needs kid in the family that's finally going to be, you know, old enough that needs a different kind of help. All the things you don't even think about.
Yeah.
Because you're right, in your 20s, often you're in the noise. You're doing all this stuff. You're finally able to travel without anybody telling you what to do. You have freedom. And it is easy for that decade to kind of go by without realizing how much of it is going by fast, without intention. Without intention, I guess that's it. Is that what you found with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's a really great phrase. A lot of people just let life happen to them. And why not? Because we're never taught to think about these things. We're never taught to live with intention. And so a lot of people let life design them. And we are taking that kind of concept and we're flipping it on its head. And yes, we don't have a crystal ball, but we can make conscious decisions of how we want our lives to look. And then we can start to make small micro steps towards getting to that vision.
One of the things you brought up earlier that I think is important and worth spending just another minute on is you talked about changing values. So you talked about it first when you start working. Of course, that value is about proving yourself, about showing I know I can make money, I can get promoted, I can excel in my field. But we don't, again, it's part of this intentionality, but you think you have these certain values. Your parents have beat it into you, right? You're supposed to be providing for yourself, and you better be ready to take care of me when I get old, or whatever. It depends on your parents. Yeah, it goes on a spectrum there. But the idea is, yeah, you kind of start out with these certain set of values, but then I think we sometimes forget to check back into what matters most to us. Is that been your experience?
Yeah, I think that absolutely rings true. And sometimes people don't always realize until, you know, they get to a breaking point, they get to a pain point where their priorities aren't really in line with what they believe to be true in their hearts. So, you know, that shows up a lot in terms of career and working long hours versus family, and that whole juxtaposition. And really when you know, they have experience and wisdom on their side, they realize that actually what they want to be doing now is it's not all about the money. It's not all about having this glamorous career. Really what it's about is being present with their families. So yeah, I think that.
So somebody's now, if somebody had some extra time on their hands, like, I don't know, for this entire month of March that's going to go on until May now, where might somebody just start to sit down, I'm going to say with a piece of paper or Post-it notes or a whiteboard or whatever, and start, how should they start to think about designing their life? Like, it's just it's such a cool concept, but where might somebody start if they just wanted to start to write things down? What would they think about?
So there's two really cool tools that I like to deploy when we begin working together as clients, and that is, you know, and you're familiar with this tool, Jen, the wheel of life. And so, you know, what we can all do is draw a circle on a page, and we can add, you know, slice it up into a pie with multiple segments. And you can add there career, you can add there your health, your well-being, how satisfied you are in your relationships. And you can break relationships down into whatever categories like resonate with you. Is it your romantic relationships? Is it your social relationships? Is it the relationships with your family, with your children? So you can kind of subcategorize that. What passions do you have? What hobbies? And how satisfied are you in relation to that? Is spirituality important to you? That's something that some people like to include. Not everyone. How satisfied you are with your personal finances. And if you can kind of write down a score between 1 to 10 of how satisfied you are in each of those areas of your life, then that helps you to have a really good data point in where you're at and how satisfied you are, and it will help to indicate which areas perhaps you might want to look at and focus in on.
You forgot my favorite piece of the pie, which is fun. Oh my God. Fun. But your point is, and I'm sorry, I just love fun. The point is, though, that is, if you start with your base, so that's your baseline. It's just like any kind of a baseline testing you do. Check in with yourself and really decide how you feel about all these aspects of your life. And that at least gives you a place to start, because, right, we had similar training, the same training actually. The idea is, once you start to identify areas where you're like, I'm not so satisfied over here, or maybe this is why I've been feeling yucky or bummed, even depressed, because some of these areas of your life you've forgotten about, neglected, used to value when you were a kid, and like, go up, need fun. Okay, there's me. But you know, these are the things that give you, that nurture you, that provide the nutrition for your soul, and yet you haven't fed it in forever.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting what you're saying there about the fun side of things, and you know, for me, and everyone is different. Right. And this is like the beauty of the wheel of life. You can put whatever you want in those segments to make your life complete and be whole. And so yeah, fun is a really cool one to include. And you know, for my wheel personally, I kind of see my fun as being in my hobbies, in my creative exploits. And so yeah, but that's a brilliant thing, isn't it? We all I see fun as being something that, you know, can be applicable in my career. If my career is going well, I have fun there. I have,
that's true,
in my spirituality, if I'm, you know, feeling nice and woo woo.
That's right. Well, yeah,
it's
a drum circle, spiritual, and can be hella fun, right?
Yeah,
just a drum circle. So, by the way, I'm going to name my next true crime novel "Creative Exploits." I love that, creative exploits. That's perfect. Yeah, we can get lots of people to participate in that one. That would be good one.
Yeah.
So, but it's true. You're right. We do, those things it's not linear. They all interact, and it's all accessed by different things that we do. Because you're right. I have fun doing work. That's why I made this up, right? Why I do this show. Because this gives me great satisfaction, and I also have a good time working and meeting with people who I care about. So this, you know, this is important to me. Great. So, okay, that's tool number one. What was the other tool?
Yeah, that's right.
So
tool number two. I like to get clients to, when they first start working with me, they come to me with a problem. They come to me with that sense that like something isn't right and I want to make changes. That's typically when people choose to start working with a professional coach. And so I like to instill in them that sense of possibility and get them really excited. And I think that this can be a really fun, exciting tool to use. And that is just reflecting, what do you want your dream life to look like? Imagine yourself in a dream day. What would you be doing? Where would you be working? Who would you be hanging out with? What would you be cooking in your kitchen? You know, whatever it might be. What is your version of, your dream day and dream life? Because I think sometimes a day is a little bit of a too small data point, but yeah, just start to imagine and write down where you want to be and what it would look like.
Damn it, I want to be with Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart, having
Okay.
drinks and just watching them. That would just be so fun. But okay, I get your point though. So the idea is strip away all the rules that you have in your head right now. Strip away all the constraints, the realities, the fact of the matter, we're all shut in our houses. But if you could imagine sometime in the future, what would that dream day look like? What would be happening and how you would be feeling about it? That starts to build a future state that then you can start to evaluate and make decisions about and start to identify those things that you may need to start to move toward.
Exactly.
So how do clients respond to that? That sounds very cool.
I find that clients really enjoy doing that exercise because it shifts them from a place of scarcity, a place of pain where they are, really struggling in life, to, sometimes it may feel intangible and unrealistic, but it is that exercise of them being able to start to imagine and dream big and realize that by taking micro steps, there is a future, there is possibilities, and we can go after this with the right support and the right strategy. We can go after this vision. And so, yeah.
Well, I love it because I think we don't realize sometimes we live with these handcuffs on, where we have just created all these constraints without, to your point, without thinking about it, right? We did all the right things. We've done all the right things. And suddenly you realize, I know for me, I woke up in my 30s and I'm like, I don't even have a boyfriend. How am I going to have a kid? Like, what the heck am I doing? And that caused me to do a whole bunch of change. Suddenly I realized, well, if I do this by myself, I got to get a house. I've got to, I just hadn't really, for me, somebody who always thinks about the future, and I still hadn't done all the math. And suddenly in my early 30s, realized I got to get a plan together if this is going to be something I'm going to do that's really going to be a different life. Raising a kid, having a kid by myself, and then raising her by myself and being the sole wage earner. I want that balance. I didn't want to be just a worker because, working wears you out. I want to be available for her too. I'm so lucky. I did not know a gig working would be the salvation, but it really was. But that's your point, is that until you stop and take a minute and realize what really matters to you, it's hard to create that life that you want. It's hard to know how to, you've got to put things in place. Some of these things take a couple of years to plan out. Take some work.
Yeah.
I suppose I could have put that energy into finding a husband, but I don't know. I think I might be financially ahead at this point. So there's that. I might be financially behind. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And I think it's very interesting because none of us have crystal balls. And so in some ways, visioning is an interesting exercise because we just can't predict what happens in our lives. But and I'm trying to recall what the quote was, where it's every decision you make is a vote towards the person that you want to be, the life that you want to live. And I really kind of believe that philosophy. And so I think that it's important to do a stock take and then just kind of have a rough idea of where you want to be, and then trust that, if you choose to kind of take small steps, make those votes towards creating that life, you will get there. And I also think it's kind of interesting, lawyers and to the extent that they experience anxiety and depression, and how this kind of features in to like the whole process of life designing. Because like over 30% of lawyers, and this is all self-declared by the way, so the number is potentially much higher, have experienced anxiety and depression in their careers. So like those
1/3 of lawyers who will cop to it are unhappy.
Yeah, 28%. So yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, you
No
know.
wonder they're so busy suing everybody. I mean, that's just so sad. It
But,
just speaks to an industry, right? I mean, okay, so
yeah.
go ahead. You were going to say more though.
Well, yeah. So you know, you make the statement so because everyone is busy suing, suing one another. But when you are doing that work, it psychologically doesn't make you feel great. It may, for some people may thrive off that whole like level 2 energy, so to speak, but a lot of people struggle with that, and it has an impact on their mental health. And also like being a lawyer, and this is true in like a number of different professions as well, but trying to spot what is the worst case scenario, what might go wrong, so that you're planning for the different eventualities and outcomes. But then because like your brain is hardwired in that way because of like what you do for work, you take it home, and that perpetuates the anxious thinking because you're always stuck in the future, preempting what worst case scenario is going to happen. And so I can really see that shows up. Anxiety is worrying about the future, and certainly in these uncertain times, a lot of people are struggling with anxiety because we just do not know what is going to happen. And so I can really kind of see these links and how it all fits together.
The connections. And I want to clarify, because you mentioned level 2 energy, and that is catabolic energy. And if you listen to the first podcast of the Life Coach Pod, I talked about energy, and that is the level where it is win-lose, which is super lawyerly. Unfortunately, it's rare. I mean, it tends to almost be arbitrators and negotiators who are looking more for the win-wins. The law is unfortunately typically set up, at least in litigation, to be win-lose. So I can see how that does. It just means you're living in that kind of unproductive, yucky energy a lot, because that's how you solve the problem. That's basically how it's set up.
Mm-hmm. That is, it's certainly in litigation, definitely. And I think that more corporate law, commercial law, where they're drafting contracts, where they're being business lawyers, then that has more of the level 5 energy, of how do we create a contract that meets the requirements of both parties in this, if the bargaining powers are equal. So that's kind of an assumption in itself, but
that's important. I mean, that actually, that idea of coming to the table with that kind of point of view is, I think, we're kind of where we are in America right now, which is how can we figure out, based on the constraints, based on what we're dealing with, how we can get a win-win out of so many situations we're facing. So I like that shift, and I'm thrilled that you're able, as a former lawyer, to be able to come at this with such a fresh and optimistic perspective. Have your parents noticed that you're different? Did they watch a change in you over time?
That's a really interesting question, because I'm not sure if my family still quite understand what I do. or believe that it is viable. The digital world, coaching, it's all very new. And it's like, a lot of people right now, remote working, going on Zoom, it's new to them, it's different, and so it can at first feel a little bit fear inducing, and why would you want to kind of change this for this? But I think that as I am getting more into this new career and this new business, then they're starting to see that this is, you know, a viable path, and it really fits with what my talents are. So
yeah, well, I think you're amazing, and I want to make sure everybody knows that is listening that I'm building web pages for every time we have a guest. You can go in and find out how to contact Charlotte, take a look at her videos. I'll put up the Wheel of Life so you have something to work with. But again, to Charlotte's point, adapt it as you start to think through your own life and where you are right now. And please do this while you're streaming Netflix and eating your chips. If you have chips, we didn't have chips for a long time, but the groceries came yesterday and now we have chips. I'm so happy. It's the little things. And Charlotte, we're going to take a couple questions, but I thank you so much for doing this today. It's just awesome to share your and your enthusiasm for this. Does anybody on the line have any questions?
Hi, it's Donna. I just wanted to thank both of you for doing the coaching thing, because I think so many people could benefit from it, that I'm glad you guys are doing something like that for people out there that, you know, reach out to you, because I'm noticing, especially in this time of sheltering in place, so many people that don't have hobbies, and I think they're the ones that aren't adjusting well to isolation, as opposed to those of us that love to do creative things all the time. I mean, I'm just knitting up a storm and crocheting and all kinds of fun stuff.
I know, John, I still can't figure out how to crochet a face mask, but you can bet I've thought about it. I keep thinking I could create a face mask that looks like a beard. Oh, maybe I'm going to do that. A crocheted beard face mask.
Well, I think your Monday class, you should do a beginning crocheting class on Monday for people, you know?
I'm not sure that would do well on a podcast, but there are plenty of videos out there right now on YouTube where you can learn to crochet, and you're doing knitting, and I think that's harder. So, oh my gosh. But yes, you're right. I think the idea about hobbies, and that's some of Charlotte's point, right? Go figure out where you have gaps in your life where you realize, hey, I don't serve myself there. Why am I not? Mm-hmm. Is photography my thing? My thing has just been, when I take my walks now, I've looked for a theme. The other day it was colors, contrasting colors. So I took pictures that day of contrasting colors. That was my big excitement. But it's, you know, you can do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think so many people, because they fill their lives with so much stuff, they get to, you know, a point like this where we're all, I'm using this phrase grounded, which I'll come back to. And they're like, hey, I have no hobbies. What do I even do with my time? And then they just don't know. Like, my hobby is watching Netflix, and that's, you know, okay for a short amount of time, but it is really helpful for people to think, well, what did you used to enjoy doing as a kid? Like, maybe there's some clues there, and really trying on different things and exploring and seeing what fits and what feels good. So
yes,
yeah.
So grounded's actually perfect, because when you got grounded, there were two things that happened. One, you missed your friends for sure. That was mine, because I was that was some hella punishment. It was called restricted in our house. You were on restriction. But the other is that you missed your fun, like your bike, or just being able to get outside, because usually being grounded meant you often were really quarantined to your house. Mm-hmm. So yeah, even talking on the phone, that used to be a big thing. No phone privileges. Oh God, just put the extrovert in a box. Why don't you? You might kill me. Should have made me go out and use it in a productive way instead. But my mom paid the price for restricting me.
That's hilarious, Jen, because I was meaning it in the context of a more like spiritual way.
Of course. Of course you were. Of course you were high-minded, and I went right to it. Yes. Grounded is not bad, but you do have.
That's amazing.
You have to tap your spirituality.
I think that's the reflection of the introvert and extrovert. There, I'm like, oh yes.
I know you're safe, and I'm going nuts. That's right. The introverts love it.
Yeah, and you know, with all the busyness that I've got going on at the moment, I'm like, I'll pay good money to go and be isolated for 12 weeks.
I love it. Donna, thank you for chiming in and the feedback about coaching too. I really appreciate that.
No problem.
Charlotte, thanks for coming on today. And everybody else will be back tomorrow with a medium who helps solve crimes. very interesting to me, and I look forward to seeing her. Thank you so much, Charlotte. Thank you, everybody, for joining
having
today.
me. Bye, everyone.